The stench of blood hung thick in the air. Dr. Evelyn Carter crouched beside the body, her gloved hands meticulously examining the jagged wound across the victim's throat. The crime scene was eerily silent, except for the distant wail of sirens. A single dim bulb flickered overhead, casting elongated shadows across the abandoned warehouse. Years of experience as a forensic scientist had desensitized her to the grotesque, but something about this case sent a chill down her spine. "This wasn't a random attack," she murmured, brushing a strand of dark brown hair from her face. Her hazel-green eyes flickered with intensity as she took in the surrounding details: the absence of a struggle, the meticulous placement of the body, the symbols drawn in blood. This was deliberate, ritualistic. Dr. Carter. A uniformed officer, his face pale and uneasy, stepped toward her. "We found something." Evelyn stood, tugging off her gloves as she followed him to the far end of the warehouse. A single ornate mirror stood in the center of the otherwise empty space, its gilded frame covered in what appeared to be centuries-old inscriptions. The glass reflected the dim light strangely, as if the depths of the mirror held something beyond mere reflection. "Strange thing to leave at a crime scene," she muttered, stepping closer. As she lifted her phone to snap a picture, the air shifted. The temperature plummeted. A whisper, distant yet piercing, curled around her ears. "You are the key." A sharp pain lanced through her skull. Her vision blurred. The world tilted. She gasped, clutching her head, as an unbearable pressure built behind her eyes. The mirror's reflection twisted, no longer her own, but that of someone else. Someone dressed in 18th century clothing, staring back with an expression both pleading and knowing. Then everything went black. The last thing Evelyn heard before her consciousness faded was the echo of that voice. "You are the key." A rush of cold air sent a shiver down Evelyn's spine. Her eyelids fluttered open to unfamiliar surroundings. A grand canopy bed, its heavy silk curtains embroidered with golden filigree. The scent of lavender and beeswax filled the air, a stark contrast to the metallic tang of blood she had last smelled. "Where am I?" She sat up, her body sluggish, her limbs strangely weak. Her hands, smaller, softer, trembled as she reached for her reflection in a polished silver mirror atop the vanity. The woman staring back was not Dr. Evelyn Carter. Gone was her short, practical haircut. Instead, waves of dark brown hair cascaded over her shoulders, tied back in elegant braids. Her hazel-green eyes were the same, but her skin appeared paler, her features softer, more delicate. A knock at the door made her jump. "My lady," a voice called from outside. "It is nearly time for breakfast. Shall I prepare your gown?" She barely had time to register the words before the door creaked open, revealing a young maid dressed in 18th century attire, her hands clasped neatly in front of her apron. The sight made Evelyn's stomach twist. This is a dream. It has to be. But as she shifted, the weight of the silk nightgown against her skin, the chill of the morning air, and the distant sound of hooves clattering against cobblestones all felt too real. "Who am I?" she whispered, voice hoarse. The maid's brows knitted in concern. "Are you unwell, Lady Evelyn?" "Lady Evelyn." Her breath hitched. It wasn't just a dream. She had woken up in another time, another body. And if the growing pit in her stomach was any indication, she had woken up to a life she knew nothing about. And worse still, she was about to be married to a man the world feared. Duke Adrian Valenhart of Ravenspire. The cursed lord. The grand dining hall was cold, almost too cold for the morning sun to warm. Evelyn sat stiffly at the long oak table, the weight of her new identity pressing down on her chest. Lady Evelyn Darcy. How strange it sounded, like someone else entirely. As she took a careful sip of her tea, she couldn't shake the strange feeling that she was trapped inside a story she couldn't understand. "Lady Evelyn," a voice drawled from across the room. Evelyn froze, the cup halfway to her lips. She slowly turned to face the man who had entered. His presence was undeniable, a tall figure dressed in deep black velvet, his silver-gray eyes icy, yet somehow intense. Duke Adrian Valenhart, the cursed lord. He was everything she had been warned about. The rumors whispered of his icy demeanor, his reclusiveness, and, most ominous of all, his tragic history. Every woman he had ever loved had died mysteriously, leading many to believe he was cursed. The dark stories followed him like a shadow, and now, Evelyn was to become a part of them. He studied her for a moment, his gaze cold but piercing, as if trying to gauge her very soul. "You must be hungry," he said, his voice like gravel, deep and low. "Though, I advise you not to grow too fond of the food here. It is not the fare that will trouble you, but what lies ahead." The words hung in the air, thick with a foreboding weight. Eveline felt her stomach tighten, a warning tingle racing up her spine. He was not one for pleasantries, that much was clear. I don't understand," she murmured, trying to compose herself. "What do you mean?" The Duke's lips curled into a small, cynical smile. "It's simple," he replied coldly. "Marrying me will be your doom, Lady Eveline." Her heart skipped a beat. His words were calm, but they carried an unshakable finality. He moved toward the window, gazing out at the gray landscape beyond. "You will suffer the same fate as those before you. Death will follow. The curse is not a legend." Evelyn swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words press down on her chest. She wasn't sure what terrified her more, the stories surrounding him, or the fact that she didn't know whether she could trust them. She had no choice but to marry him, but she didn't know if she was ready to die, just to break his curse. The Duke turned back to her, his eyes lingering on hers for a moment longer than necessary. "I suggest you reconsider your decision, Lady Evelyn." His words sent a shiver down her spine as she silently nodded. This was just the beginning. The days that followed were filled with a strange unease, a constant weight pressing on Evelyn's chest. Despite her best efforts to carry on with her duties as Lady Evelyn Darcy, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, deeply wrong, within the walls of Ravenspire Manor. It started one evening as she wandered the vast, dimly lit corridors of the manor, the silence almost oppressive. Her footsteps echoed louder than they should have been, and she found herself drawn toward the forbidden wing of the estate. It was a part of the house that even the servants avoided, old, forgotten, and untouched. But something inside her urged her forward, an inexplicable pull, as though the walls themselves were calling to her. As she stepped into the shadowy hallway, the temperature seemed to drop, and the air grew thick with a sense of foreboding. The portraits lining the walls stared down at her, their eyes following her every move, but one, in particular, caught her attention. It was a painting of a beautiful woman, young, vibrant, with golden hair and hauntingly sad blue eyes. The woman stood beside the Duke, her face frozen in an expression of joy, yet there was something unsettling about her gaze. A voice, soft and distant, echoed through her mind. "The first fiancé." The words felt like a slap to her consciousness. She stumbled back, her hand gripping the frame of the painting for support. A flash of images, blurred and disjointed, suddenly overwhelmed her vision. A woman's body lying cold on the marble floor, blood staining the gown she wore. The Duke kneeling beside her, his face twisted in agony. The vision lasted only a moment, but it left a deep chill in her bones. "What is this?" she whispered aloud, her voice trembling. Her heart pounded in her chest as she tried to shake off the disorienting feeling. She turned away, the weight of the vision sinking in. She needed answers. The next morning, Evelyn sought out the housekeeper, a sharp-witted woman named Mrs. Avery, who had served the Ravenspire family for years. She found the woman in the garden, tending to the rose bushes with a careful hand. "Mrs. Avery," Evelyn began, her voice low, "tell me about the Duke's fiancée, the one before me. What happened to her?" The older woman paused, her hands stilling on the petals as she looked up at Evelyn. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as though weighing how much to reveal. "It's not something people speak of freely, my lady," Mrs. Avery said quietly. "The fiancée, Lady Eleanor, was the first to fall victim to the curse. She was a sweet, kind woman. They were in love, or so it seemed. But one night, she was found dead in her chambers, her throat slit. No one saw the killer, and no one could explain why." Evelyn's heart skipped a beat. The vision she had seen, it had been real. "Others before her," Mrs. Avery continued, her voice growing softer, "met similar fates, each one more tragic than the last. Some say the curse started with the Duke's great-grandfather, but no one knows for sure. It has haunted this family for generations, and the Duke, well, he believes it is his punishment." "Ah, punishment for what?" Evelyn asked, a chill running down her spine. "The Duke has never spoken of it directly," Mrs. Avery said, her voice filled with a trace of sadness. "But it is said he was cursed by a woman he betrayed long ago. The curse was meant to follow him, to make sure he never finds happiness in love." Evelyn's mind raced. She had to know more. Every fiber of her being screamed that she was connected to this curse. But how? Was she the key, as that whisper from the mirror had said? Or was she doomed to be another tragic end in the Duke's long line of lost loves? She knew she couldn't wait any longer. She needed to investigate the truth behind the curse, to understand why the Duke and his ancestors were doomed to such sorrow. But as the days passed, the visions continued. The faces of past fiancés, each one a ghost, their fates sealed in blood, haunted her dreams, and she began to see fragments of their tragic endings during the waking hours. It was as though the very walls of Ravenspire Manor held the answers she sought, if only she could piece together the fragments. With each passing day, Evelyn became more determined. She would not become another victim. She would uncover the secrets of the curse, even if it meant unearthing the darkest parts of Ravenspire's history. And perhaps the answers lay in the Duke's own tortured past. The more Evelyn delved into the mystery surrounding Ravenspire Manor, the deeper she found herself immersed in a web of dark secrets. It seemed every corner of the estate hid something forbidden, something the Duke himself had kept buried. And the more she learned, the less she could ignore the eerie feeling that followed her wherever she went. It started with a letter, hidden deep within an old chest in the manor's library. The letter was yellowed with age, the ink smudged from years of neglect. It was addressed to a Lady Eleanor, the Duke's first fiancée. Evelyn's hands trembled as she read the fragile pages, the words haunting in their simplicity. "My dearest Eleanor, I regret what has come to pass. You must leave this place. The curse I carry is real, and it will take you from me just as it has taken all others. Please run while you still can. With all my heart, Adrian." Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She knew that the letter spoke of the curse, but what had truly happened to Lady Eleanor? The letter hinted at a warning, a desperate plea to escape, but no one ever left Ravenspire Manor. They all seemed to die before they could. Her investigation deepened, and she found more letters, each one more desperate, each one signed by the Duke, urging the women to flee. But none of them had ever listened, and none of them had ever escaped. Then, one evening, she stumbled upon something truly forbidden. Hidden behind the rows of dusty books in the library's oldest section, Evelyn discovered a dark, leather-bound tome. Its pages were covered in symbols she didn't recognize, and the words were written in a language that seemed both ancient and strange. The book emanated a faint, otherworldly glow as she flipped through its pages. The title was no less unsettling: The Dark Arts of the Cursed. Her heart raced as she read the contents. It described rituals, incantations, and the art of binding spirits, things she knew were far beyond her understanding. She was about to close the book when she noticed a passage written in the margins. It was in English, unlike the rest of the book, and it read, "To break the curse, one must make a sacrifice. A heart must be given willingly, freely given. Only then will the chains of fate be broken. The words sent a chill down her spine. A sacrifice. What kind of sacrifice? And who was the heart meant to be? The next day, Evelyn's curiosity led her to an old tower hidden deep within the estate grounds. No one had mentioned it to her, and the staff always avoided it when she asked. There was a foreboding aura surrounding the place, its dark stones seeming to absorb the sunlight, leaving only shadows in its wake. The door to the tower was locked, but Evelyn had an uncanny knack for finding ways to open things, whether by coincidence or perhaps something more. She managed to slip a small pin from her hair and, with delicate precision, unlocked the door. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. The tower was bare, empty, save for a single window that allowed just enough light to pierce through the gloom. But what caught Evelyn's eye was a strange symbol etched into the stone floor in the center of the room. It was the same symbol she had seen in the book, the one connected to dark rituals and binding spirits. A sense of dread crawled up her spine, but as she stepped closer to the symbol, she froze. From the corner of her eye, she saw something, a shadowy figure standing in the doorway. Her heart skipped a beat. She spun around, but there was nothing there, only the oppressive silence of the tower. "Set me free!" The voice was soft, barely a whisper, yet it rang clear in the still air. Eveline's blood ran cold. The voice, so familiar, almost seemed to belong to someone she knew, someone who had been trapped for far too long. She darted out of the tower, her breath coming in quick gasps. The feeling of being watched did not leave her, and as she returned to the manor, the eerie whispers seemed to follow. That night, as she tried to sleep, the nightmares began. The figure of a woman, bound in chains, stood before her. Her face was obscured by darkness, but her pleading voice echoed in Evelyn's mind. "Set me free!" Evelyn awoke with a start, drenched in sweat. Her heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the presence of the woman in her dreams, as though she had stepped out of the shadows and into her reality. She had to know who the woman was and why she was speaking to her. The answers were within the tower, within the books she had found, and most importantly, within the curse itself. But the question lingered. Would Evelyn be strong enough to break the curse? Or would she, too, fall victim to the darkness that haunted Ravenspire Manor?